offices I mentioned just earlier. The case of identification, we found in some areas where people have lost their membership card, but they have their PVC, and then the party in its considered wisdom said either of two could validate your as an identification for members to identify themselves. So if you go to your ward, and then on the presentation of the membership register of the party, your name is there. It's either you present your membership card, or in the alternative, you also come with your PVC, which will clearly have the same name as the name that we have in our party register in the ward.
I think it's quite clear, you know, because for you to be a member of a party, you have to register from the ward level.
From the ward level.
Right, and that register actually becomes the key instrument, you know,
Yes.
that determines who belongs to a party or not. As an intra-party, as rightly mentioned, I think it is followed by all parties. But at this point, let's return to Port Harcourt. Barrister Oponipere, Kingsley was actually asking you at the time, before we lost signals to Port Harcourt, about requirements for one to be eligible to vote. But our friend here has already taken care of that. But I'd like you to speak to this too, because you raised this aspect in the course of your initial submission. Now, looking at the nation's political voyage, let's start from 1993, when Professor Humphrey Nwosu of the then NEC brought about option A4, which is close to what we're calling direct primaries this time around. And you actually mentioned something like that in the course of your answering the first question. Now, would you advocate? I know that at that time, many people criticized the option, saying that it is primitive, right? And, you know, now, this time around, we're talking about direct primaries. Would you advocate for that kind of system to be brought to bear this time around?
Thank you so much for your question. Actually, you find out that the direct primary system, which, like you said, was adopted during the Professor Humphrey Nwosu's tenure as chairman of the National Electoral Commission at that time, as he then was. So I believe that going forward, Nigeria should progress towards a situation whereby we employ the direct primary, the direct voting system, so that democracy will be deepened, so that democracy will be more participatory, so that the concept of some certain delegates parading themselves as elites, the concept of some certain delegates, you know, being prone to corruption will be completely eliminated. So I want to say that the indirect primary system, excuse me, the indirect primary system is actually prone to corruption. It is actually prone to manipulation, and it is in fact elitist. So I think Nigeria would do well to gradually go back to the direct primary system. And now when you want to talk about the direct primary system, it means that the party structure, the framework within the political party must be very well strengthened. The institutions within the respective political parties must be very well strengthened, so that you have a credible database of members, so that you have a credible system where members are actually recognized and documented. And then, of course, if the party system, the internal party system and structure is well grounded, you find out that it will form the basis for a credible, you know, direct primary system. So, in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is that it is a very good idea for Nigeria to go back, particularly Nigerian political parties, to go back to the era of direct primaries. In that way, democracy will be more deepened. In that way, democracy will be more participatory. Because indeed, what we have now is a kind of a pseudo-democracy, where some delegates, sometimes you hear about delegates list, unity list, all manner of lists. So, you know, we are succumbing to those tendencies that actually led to the military back in those days coming back to power. So, in conclusion, I want to say that the direct primary system is actually the most effective and the most efficient as far as democracy is concerned.
All right, Opponent Perez, thank you very much. Let's get the thoughts here of Abdul Rahman Hamisu. Abdul Rahman Hamisu, fine, you've listened to the other three guests with regard to at least one of the key requirements for the successful conduct of direct primaries, namely a credible membership database. But the question, one of the aspects of the question I asked is as follows. Do political parties in Nigeria know their membership strength? And indeed, can they identify those members? Because I'm asking this question, if you recall, sometime in 2007 or 2006, when the PDP was deregistering some of his members, including Atiku in Adamawa, they said they couldn't register him there. So they now brought a notebook to the villa where they put his name, and they said, look, that name wasn't, that register wasn't authentic.
Yes. You see, things like this happen in an atmosphere of impunity, where rules are not followed, where whims and caprices determine the way forward regarding how you decide the fate of political opponents, and where there is disagreement. But of course, it is not something that is out of place. Where voter registers are supposed to be used, I bet you, if it is a part of the requirement for parties to participate in an election, assuming it's not intra-party activity, it is a national thing that, okay, part of the requirement for you to field any candidate is direct primary. Now, what that does is to return power to the people. Is empowering the people to be able to discipline their leaders as well as members of the same political party. So that equally make it imperative and expedient for political parties to do a lot of homework to get this voter register. But what has been happening is the fact that voter register has become more or less like a formality, where people go to register, but then nothing is done with this voter register. So that at the end of it all, if you go to a ward to register, the next thing is the chairman will ask the secretary, please, can you provide the voter register? And he calls the publicity secretary, where's the voter register? Because it is not in use. But if it has empowered the people to participate, and they need to participate, then it becomes something that is part of the requirement for the party to be seen to be credible, to be doing the right thing, to get the names of their members ahead of any election. So that, as Dr. Duru mentioned, if you come to vote, your voter card or the PVC, your name must tally with the one in the register. So register becomes one of the first requirements of any social organization within the party, because it is key to the most critical activity of the party, which is selecting people to contest in an election. So, but what is happening is, as Professor Kabiru Mato rightly pointed out, I used to refer to some of these political parties as a briefcase political parties, where you have a party that has become NGO. The aim of the registration is not to participate in an election, but to position some persons to be able to take advantage of whatever one could gain during the process. Don't forget the fact that international NGOs usually support the parties in terms of building their capacity. So you have some people that register political party in order to target such a benefit. You have those that register political parties in order to endorse. So what they do is to come together, 5 political parties that has no voter register, and they sit in one hotel, and they said they've adopted the candidate of so party at a fee. So you can't rule out all of this. So those parties that are serious in terms of fielding candidate for election, if they really want Nigerians, because what is happening, even what even led to a massive victory for APC before the 2015 election was the credibility of the party primary process that decided to remove the roles of the political godfathers who goes about with this unity list that we're talking about, and then deciding to pick credible candidate that people could vote for. So what we're saying is, it is even in the interest. What is happening is, whether these parties are ready for it or not, if Party A is doing it, and Party A is winning the election, it will force Party B and Party C to start doing the same thing. So what we are saying is, empower the people, because it is about the people. Let the people from the ward level decide who will be their leaders. So you don't just vote for somebody and the person runs to Abuja until at the eve of election, and he comes back with all sorts of things from Maggi to clothing materials, and then decide to buy the conscience of the people.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. Before we go on a short break now, let's return to Dr. Duru. One of the reasons the proponents of direct primaries have given is the fact that it will eliminate money politics. And of course, the latest one that we now know as a vote buying. You were in Osun State and you saw things for yourself. Now, yes. Does this direct primaries reduce money politics?
First, again, let me correct the impression. I'm not doctor by any stretch of imagination. I would like to say, before I go into that question, to answer the question you asked, do political parties have an authentic, credible voter register that they can vouch for? Membership register they can vouch for. I would like to say the answer is yes, because every politics is local. Political parties do have authentic membership register in their respective wards, in the local government and in the states. And that also was brought to fore with our experience in Osun State. The authentic membership register were given to the 5-man committee that was set up by the party to go and conduct the gubernatorial primaries in Osun State. However, the question is it usually updated? And that would probably be the next question, because the fluidity of it all, members do come, or citizens of the wards would come to update the member register. But because of the exercise, and they need to have a cutoff time, a date was set when there was a cutoff time for members to come and register within the political party. So the answer, yes, the parties do have an authentic members register that you can vouch for. I think it was one famous philosopher who said that to all forms of government, let fools debate. What is best administered is best. In this case, every exercise, whether by direct primaries or indirect primaries, is subject to one form of abuse or the other. And there's an element that we always recommend, whether it's direct primaries or indirect primaries. It depends on the process and of course, the structure of the party to ensure a credible, free and fair election. My experience in Osun State is that it was largely free, largely credible, and then we could also touch the pulse of the people that for the first time in a long while, they have been given the opportunity to freely decide who fly the flag of the party as a gubernatorial candidate. I mean, you'll be so shocked to go into a ward, you will find over 5,000 people lining up to exercise their franchise. And in a way, I would like to recommend that to not just to our party to adopt that as a means of throwing up candidates to fly the flag of the party in the respective offices, but for also other political parties, because what I also saw in Osun State is that despite the fact that it's also participatory, it became a tool of advertising for the party and mobilization. What then happened in the particular ward is that when you find people aggregating in a particular ward to determine their candidate, people will be asking, what is going on here? Are you guys doing something? Are the people doing something here? And then they will begin to hear that this is an exercise to throw up the candidate of the party that will fly the flag of the party in the gubernatorial exercise. So yes, it was free, it was credible.
Did you reduce money politics?
Essentially so, because I didn't see the vote buying, because there was no vote to buy. People queued against the candidates they wanted or their agent or against the poster and all that. The food that were provided in those wards, I understand, were provided by the electoral local organizing committee that we charge with the responsibility of conducting the election in those wards.
All right, Honorable Duru, thank you very much. Let's return to Professor Kabiru Mato. Professor Mato, earlier you were talking about the experience of Kaduna State in the recent local government election, that the candidates of the APC in the local government election came about by direct primaries. Is that correct? And if that is so, tell us, how were the direct primaries organized? What membership register was used by the party, and what was the point of departure, if any, from what the Osun experience has been this weekend?
I think the Ocean experience actually took roots from what happened in Kaduna. When the governor insisted that we must, select our candidates contesting for councillorship and local government chairmanship through direct primaries, a lot of us thought it was rather a futile exercise. We thought it was difficult. We thought it was impossible. But insistence made us to work round the clock, to ensure that at the end of the day, we achieved, the purpose for which, the whole thing evolved. First thing, like I did say, the constitution of the APC is very categorical about that. Selection of candidates for, any political position should be through direct primaries. And what we did really was to try to lay our hands on, the party registers, and where the party register was not available, we therefore returned to the idea of having, party membership cards, those who registered with the party, and a provision was also added there, simply because you have, you're a card-carrying member of the APC and you do not have a PVC, does not make you a functional APC member. And so what we did was to say, look, you have a, you are registered with the party and this is your card and this is your PVC, then we know you are an effective APC member, and then you queue and then you elect whoever the candidate was. And that was what we did in the 23 local government areas of Kaduna State. Like I did say, it was not 100%, successful thing, as, we are trying it for the first time, and therefore we experienced some very minor hiccups. But at the end of the day, the entire members of the political party called the APC in the state became satisfied, and, that really they were given the opportunity and they exercised their free will to elect whoever the candidate that was to represent them, that particular election were to be. That is the number one success which was achieved. Secondly, also, the process itself threw up a lot of challenge, and it also convinced a lot of other pundits that, look, it's possible, by the way, to go through direct primaries. Just like Chiduduru was, saying the other time, it is very true that it is impossible for you to identify 10 or 20 or 30 delegates that you could put 50,000 naira or 100,000 naira and give to them. Okay, yes, the cost is enormous because the electoral agency or the political party will have to spend, a lot of money in printing ballot papers and organizing, security and so on and so forth. But to me, that's money spent in the right direction, which is far better than leaving candidates, identifying a select few delegates that would determine the actual price that they were to be paid before they vote for any candidate. And like I said, at the end of the day, it becomes a futile exercise, because the fact that a candidate or an aspirant pays, is not a total guarantee that at the end of the day that the girls are going to vote for that person. So I want to congratulate, the APC chairman, Comrade Oshomole, for building up on this particular constitutional provision, which we in Kaduna, started. And of course, it's a very big story. I don't like to go into the election. It is, it is a benchmark for any other state to copy. We had an election where the opposition party was able to, take some local government areas, free, fair, and credible. And after the election, because the process was very thorough. By the time we conducted the election, we were anxious that the governor should, swear in the local government chairman. He said, no, we're not going to swear in the local government chairman because the process was transparent. We're not afraid anybody who desires to go to court should go to court. And I guess that's why most states, when they do their local government elections in the afternoon and in the evening, they swear in their, those who are victorious at the election. So I think the direct primaries is the way to go. But again, let me sound this warning. It is not necessarily implying that the indirect primary itself is undemocratic. The nature of the Nigerian political scenery is what has completely distorted the process to the extent that it is impossible. People struggle as a matter of life and death in order to be elected as delegates because of the economic premium that accompany that particular position. So if it is becoming difficult, or if it has become so impossible for us to do elections through the indirect system, why don't we go back to the basics? All it takes is that the political parties will have to spend more. And of course, even the aspirants themselves, if they desire to spend money, then of course, they know that they have a large volume of money to spend, which therefore reduces the possibilities of money changing hands during the electoral process. I think the process is is fine, it's transparent, and I hope the rest of the elections, APC, I'm sure, will go that way. Other political parties too will have to, learn the process and try to improve and enhance, on the political strategy of attaining successes within the political system. I think this is a very important milestone in the political history of this country, especially election as the foundation of any democratic system, and the APC must continue to build on it. I don't expect that after Kaduna, after Oshun, that there will be no problems. There will be a lot of teething challenges that will have to be continuously encountered and addressed. That's how a system evolves. That's how a process comes into being. As it is today, anybody can say whatever he or she desires to say in condemning or criticizing what has happened on Oshun, but it's a landmark in the evolutionary history of the Nigerian electoral politics.
Thank you, Professor Kabir Matu. You rightly pointed out that there could be challenges because in the local government election in Kaduna State, we also discussed on this program some of the challenges that we experienced during the election. But by and large, it was well done. Now, let's return to Port Harcourt, where Barrister Oponi Pere is. Before we go to the tweets that we have, because Nigerians are beginning to react, let me put this question to him. Well, you have spoken globally in favor of direct primaries. Now, do you sense any possibility of that system being manipulated? Because Professor Mato did earlier around say that the indirect system is not unpolitical. It is political, but then it is easily manipulated. Do you sense that this direct system could also be manipulated?
As is characteristic of every human institution, you find out that humans are very dynamic in trying to cheat a system, in trying to overcome what is actually put in place by the system. So what this means, or what this implies, is that the parties, the respective political parties, must be constantly on their toes to ensure that they keep, refining the process so that at the end of the day, we would have a foolproof system that cannot actually be hacked or cannot actually be compromised by smart Alex. So what I'm saying is that indeed, there is actually no foolproof system in the world. But with time, over time, the actors, the principal actors in the system must ensure that they are constantly on their toes. That's why we're talking about, the parties themselves. In fact, the issue of direct primaries actually throws up the supremacy of the party. If the party is actually strengthened, the party structure is actually strengthened, you will find out that they will be given a lot of free hand to ensure that the system is constantly being refined until we have a foolproof system. So indeed, what I'm trying to say is that there is no system that is infallible, but the actors in the system must clearly, demonstrate a capacity to ensure that the system works.
Oponi Pere, thank you very much. As my colleague Kirian indicated, we have some tweets that have come in. We will take those tweets. A number of points, Kirian, have also come up from the contributions of our guests. Yes. With regard to the consequences of direct primaries as a factor in boosting internal party democracy and also enhancing internal party organization. That's part of the dynamics that our guests will have the opportunity of speaking to before we move on. Whether, of course, direct primaries will spell the death knell for godfathers. All right, this tweet from Festus Akimboyewa is as follows. Direct party primary is a game changer in our politics. It will bring democracy to the real people and give them a sense of belonging. It will also reduce corruption and bring sanity to our politics, as politicians will be compelled to meet and know the people they seek to govern.
Now, Aminu Uba Al-Hassan, though very exhausting, rigorous, primitive, and ancient, option A4 is still the best, most free and most fair way of electing candidates who fly parties' flags. Congratulations, Nigeria and Nigerians. We shall get it right.
Moses Hassan, direct primaries would definitely reflect the wish of the people. Delegates' voting outcome is mostly determined by state governors. I think whatever the disadvantage of direct primaries will ultimately supersede the advantage of delegates' primaries. I go with direct primaries. That's Moses Hassan.
All right, now, Omo Buolahon, direct primaries may have its flaws, but it appears the better. It appears the better because it allows for grassroots participation. People are directly involved in choosing whoever leads them. It brings the aspiring candidates one-on-one with those he or she intends to lead.
Jerry Uho tweets, successful direct party primaries will be an indication that the supposed owners of the party have taken control. It shows freedom and participation, which are the ingredients of democracy. Anyone opposed to the system of direct primaries isn't a Democrat.
All right, Adeolu Adewaju. It is a good development for Nigeria and Nigerians, but we all know that these people, that is those in charge of organizing, will find a way of rigging it to suit their already chosen candidates, as seen in Osho, APC, and PDP primaries.
Olowokere Olajide tweets, now direct primary could have helped the most credible candidates of the two leading political parties in Ekiti to emerge. Direct primaries will also reduce money politics.
All right, Aminu Haliru says, actually, kudos should go to APC Chairman Adams Oshomole for adopting a direct primary in order to allow full participation of members of the party, and it also eradicates or reduces vote buying drastically from candidates.
And this is a very important one, in addition to all the other important ones that we have read. I hope our guests will listen to this as well. Kirian,
yeah.
Salihu Shehu is tweeting, is there any way one can register for more than one political party? So that when they are having their primaries, you'll be hopping, from one level to the other, just like politicians themselves defect from one party to the other.
It's become a business, just as one parent did point out that humanity, has a way of manipulating situations.
Precisely, Professor Mato Ismail will come to you, and then the other guys to speak to this particular issue. Let's run.
All right, now Sakiru says indirect method is choosing a strange candidate from the higher authority on people. If the party is popular and strong, it can bring any candidate from the grassroots to win.
And Dele Jack Solomon has this tweet. Direct primaries are very expensive and time-consuming, but they will force parties to clean up their party membership registers and improve their organization. And more importantly, it will get rid of the handful of delegates and few individuals who disproportionately influence the outcome of politics in the country. So those are the set of tweets that we are taking in the meantime. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we will take off from that aspect of saying party members defecting in the course of primaries, and then also party chieftains themselves switching platforms ahead of elections.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words. Run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Why don't you people sell imported materials here? As beautiful as the shop is.
Auntie, buying foreign goods does not help our economy. Neither does it boost.
Up to this moment on today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Well, there is one tweet that came from Salihu Shehu, which of course my colleague Kingsley, highlighted a short while ago, and that has to do with the possibility of someone registering in more than one party to enable him participate in all the primaries. And we had earlier raised the issue of how manipulative, these direct primaries could be. And now, let me ask this question to Duru, because you are a party man on the ground. Yeah.
All right. Duru.
Yes.
Yes, let's speak to the fact that there is a possibility of someone registering in more than one political party that will give him the leverage to participate in different primaries.
I have earlier said that politics is local, and the indigenes of the wards know themselves. And I would be very surprised of the possibility for people to register in more than two political parties in their respective ward. It would be something I would find very difficult to believe. Where I come from, I know that people have a choice either to be in all the political parties that we have. But what I do find is that in the authentic membership register of the parties, it is always impossible for a political party to register more than to register one person, and then that person is also in another political party. So it's something that I will find very strange to believe that do happen.
All right, let's go to Kaduna. Professor Mato, we would like you to speak to this issue with respect to the possibility of a person belonging to more than one political party and participating in the primaries of such political parties, considering that the primaries may not be held on the same day and at the same time, and then it could then become some avenue for, financial enrichment, if you like.
Well, like Chief Duru said, I do know also that every politics is local, and the very foundation of any political belief, in my opinion, lies very strictly on the attitude of people. No matter how much we have laws drafted and put in place, as long as we do not have the right attitudinal frame to be able to, do things as they are supposed to be done, then we are, of course, doomed to be faced with very tremendous challenges. It's not impossible that you get that, especially now that political parties are engaging in direct primaries. Somebody registering in either two of the major political parties, so that in case some stipends are given during primaries of this political party, he takes and then he moves to that. That's not completely impossible. What I do know is very possible, and it's happening within our political scene, is that there's always renting of crowd whenever political rallies are taking place, especially for those political parties that have a lot of money. They have the potentials to raise funds, charter buses, put fees, and then young unemployed people from across the 36 of the Federation are congregated and paid certain allowances to attend political rallies. That I know is possible. But as to the authenticity of one person belonging to two political parties, at that level, I think is very, very minimal. Of course, what is more preponderant here is for the very highly placed political elites to want to belong, or to want to put their one leg in this formation and the other leg in the other formation. And this brings us to the very vexed issue of what people call defection. You don't see defection among the lower strata of the political establishment. You see defection mainly from those who desire to achieve certain economic or political aspirations, and they are finding it either impossible within this platform, and therefore desiring to shift to that. So the tweet by Salisu, in my view, speaks more about the upper echelon of the Nigerian political scenery, much more than those who will go and vote during party primaries. It's a disaster, that has continued to happen, and it speaks very negatively about the aspiration of the Nigerian political establishment to be able to firmly put in place political structure, that will have the capacity to propel the nation out of its woods. Instead, most of these political elites are so selfish in their aggrandizement and desire to continue to control political power for the selfish aim of achieving economic benefits.
Thank you. And we're glad you just mentioned defection, because that's where we're going next. And I'd like Abdulrahman to come in here. One of the consequences of indirect primaries or delegate approach to primaries that has not yielded the required result is defection. Why the preponderance that we have witnessed in Nigeria over the years? And some politicians, very key ones, shamelessly cross over there, the next time around, he returns, and all of that.
Yes. Well, what has been happening over time is that the political configuration in Nigeria is such that promotes the interests of the elites, not the interests of the voters. And that speaks to the disdain and contempt most of the elites have for the voters. You come to realize that during the 2015 general election, with the introduction of card readers, you found sitting governors losing their bid to go to Senate. It is something that was happening for the first time. In Nigeria, once the elites are decided, they impose their will on the people. And that is why the masses will queue and vote, and before you knew it, during the transmission of the result are altered. What the direct primary does is to instill discipline, because power has returned to the people that's supposed to wield power in deciding the fate of their leaders. So if the interest of the masses is the same interest the politician that wants to defect is pursuing, there must be a time where these people will have to meet as a constituency, as a group, to say, we, the people, have empowered you as our leader to defect, because in this current arrangement, our interest has not been taken care of. But what we've been witnessing over time is an elite whose interest has been threatened within a political party defecting, and then they go to a stadium where crowd has been rented to say that I'm defecting with 5,000 of my supporters. So naturally, what we're supposed to see is that politician with that 5,000 of his supporters. But the trick and the manipulation is that the viewers are given the discretion to think whatever they want to think, that those 5,000 number of people are within the stadium and they're together with the leadership. So what we're saying is, if the direct primaries will be used, and then a leader that has been pursuing his own selfish interests, using the name of the people. My people said, I have conferred with my people and they said I should move. Now, such a person will come to the realization that he doesn't even have any number he's referring to as his people. But the indirect primary usually give them this very particular power, because we're not seeing the people. Everything is done indirectly, and then their interest is taken care of in such a way that it encourages other persons to. Don't forget the fact that previously in this country, if you really want political appointment, all you need to do is to join a political party. Then you start creating internal division. Then close to the election, you defect to the party that you think was going to win the election. And once that party wins the election, you are rewarded with a political appointment, because it is assumed that you are the person that added the final weight to the process. So, but now with direct primaries, where even the politicians themselves are not even sure of their own fate because of what they've been doing, then that equally sanitizes the process, and equally the issues of defection. Because if you want to defect, you have to defect with the total number of people you needed to give you victory in the new party that you are going.
To the extent, Hamisu, that direct primaries is almost invariably it's an open popularity test,
yes,
of the aspirants, Kyrian.
Yes, exactly.
And so if you are defecting from that party, then the chances might be that you might not get the support of voters in that area. But Opone in Port Harcourt, let's get your closing thoughts on this. Still on the nexus between credible direct, because direct primaries can also be abused if you do not have an authentic membership database. credible direct primaries as a disincentive to carpet crossing or defection, and more essentially, what it does to internal party organization. If political parties hold their rallies, hold their meetings at the local level regularly and frequently on the day of the primaries, and then you have a merchant who is coming with different membership cards, it might be easier to weed out such persons. Do you agree with this thesis?
I want us to note the following. One, there is actually no law in Nigeria preventing or precluding defection, or what is generally known as carpet crossing. There is actually no law. In fact, we had the celebrated case of the Attorney General of the Federation versus Atiku Abubakar, where the Supreme Court, while deprecating the conduct of the then sitting vice president, actually said, well, he cannot be removed as vice president because he defected. So what are we talking about? Defection is, to all intents and purposes in Nigeria, it is still legal. Now, secondly, I wish to address the issue of a particular person, registering in two or more political parties for the purpose of financial gain. Actually, if you ask me, I would say, yes, it is possible, simply because in Nigeria, the party structures, the respective party structures have not developed enough, have not advanced to the point where the parties within themselves have what is known as peer review mechanisms, where their databases are networked, just like what we have in the banking system, where if you have your BVN, you cut across all the banks in Nigeria. So if, for instance, a particular voter, or a particular member of a political party is registered in one particular party, if we had a system of peer review, if we had a network system of all the political parties, maybe administered by the Independent National Electoral Commission, you would immediately detect that this particular person has actually registered in Party A, and so he cannot register in Party B. So we are yet to evolve to that stage where we have, proper systems, proper structures in place. So it is so unfortunate that in Nigeria, defection is driven by pecuniary gains. It is driven by, corruption. Unlike in advanced democracies where defection is driven by ideology. So to that extent, I want to say that defection, whether we like it or not, it will continue to hold sway in Nigerian politics. So the respective parties, now that we are moving towards the regime of direct primaries, the respective parties should begin to rise above, the sentiments and look at how they can actually integrate and work together, because ultimately we're looking at the survival of democracy. We're looking at the deepening of democracy in our country, regardless of which party is actually in power. I hope I've answered your question.
You have indeed, and that serves as your closing remarks too. And at this point, I'd like to thank you for sharing your time with us this morning, and Good Morning Nigeria. That's our friend in Port Harcourt, Temipa Jekinso Oponi Pere, member, governing board of the Abubakar Tafawa Balewa University, Bauchi. Thank you once again for coming. And in Kaduna, we had Professor Kabiru Maltu, whom we earlier introduced as a Commissioner for Agriculture. Well, he is now the Commissioner for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs, but he was also Commissioner for Agriculture in Kaduna State. Thank you very much, Kabiru Maltu, for joining us this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you. And right here in the studio, let's thank Nzechi Diduru, former member, House of Reps, and Secretary of the APC Osun State Primary Election. Thank you for your thoughts on the show today. And of course, Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, researcher, teacher, and public affairs analyst. It's been a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's take some of our complimentary segments, and the first of which is sports.